Welcome into the ACC Preview Show. I'm Brandon Shanahan, and you're watching our Power 5 Preview Series here on the Cornhusker Connection Network on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you enjoy your podcast. Daily content coming to you for the rest of the regular season. Tons of stuff coming out. Week 0 coming up this week. Football to talk about it will be great to talk about anything other than realignment and all the recruiting. We're finally getting college football games, and I'm so excited. And we're talking about a lot of college football games here today, part of our Power 5 preview series, where each day this week we pick a conference, go game by game, week by week, and predict every single game for every single team. It's important that we do it this way because I think it's easy for a lot of people who do full season previews to look at a team like, well, they look like a 10-win team, they look like a 6-win team, and then work their way backwards to get to their number. But I think there's so much more context that goes into the regular season here, and so many of these teams have different ebbs and flows that I think it's important to go week by week, and then we'll see where we're at the end of the year. But the ACC here today, interesting conference. It's definitely the one that I probably know the least well. Just with being in the Midwest and now in Texas, there's so much more Big Ten that I'm used to, so much more Big 12 that I'm used to. The Pac-12 even, I think, has been more accessible. But lots of good stuff going on. And I think top down, they're going to be a better conference than they were last year. So weird 22 season as a whole for the conference. You know, I am an avid Big 12 fan, so by default means I'm pretty much an ACC hater. And frankly, last year, once Clemson kind of fell off, I kind of expected the ACC to kind of implode upon itself and for, another seat at the table to open for maybe a Big 12, or there's a lot of good teams in the Pac-12. But yeah, just a weird game, lots of inexperienced rosters, lots of new coaches, and then even some tragedy and cutting Virginia's season short last year. But this sets up to be a big bounce back year for the conference. 4 of the top 20 most experienced teams as far as returning production reside in the ACC, including Florida State, who's a heavy favorite in a lot of their games. They are the second most experienced team, and Duke's at 3, North Carolina at 6, Miami at 17. So the ACC should make a huge leap from the top to the bottom, pretty much throughout the conference, and should get back to pretty strong prominence. But as we do for each conference, I'll go through and kind of tell you what I think about each team before we dive into their schedule. Just kind of give you a baseline on what I'm thinking about them. Clemson, rumor is that if they don't have a generationally talented quarterback like Deshaun Watson or Trevor Lawrence, they can't compete on a national level. Well, this is going to be a year to prove that wrong, and they're certainly set up for it. Now, maybe not the arm talent of those 2 other quarterbacks that I mentioned, but Cade Klubnik definitely should be able to get it done, and that's certainly the expectation. He's got a full off season as quarterback 1. Which could lead to a big jump in production. They also added TCU offensive coordinator Garrett Riley, who led Week 1 QB2 Max Duggan to New York as a Heisman finalist. And then they went to the national championship game, and so much of that was their offense and the way that they were able to evolve under Garrett Riley. So that's a huge add for the Tigers. But that'll be kind of the biggest question mark, is how Garrett Riley and this offense can gel before the season gets started, because their defense should not be an issue. They should very well get back to elite status. They bring back 8 starters coming back from an already good unit last year, so they're certainly set up to do well on the defensive end. Florida State, part of me, and I think coming into this research, I wanted to think that they're just like East Texas, right? They're Florida, Texas, where it's this big, historically great college football brand that we all want to be back, that we all have fond memories of them winning at the highest level. And whether it be aesthetics or tradition, and we just, as a college football fan, it's fun to see Florida State on the TV, competing on the national level. And last year they looked really good, but they beat up on a lot of big brands. But I think they may be more paper tigers an impressive feats. They got a fluky win against LSU in Chip Kelly's first game in purple. They beat a middle-of-the-road Florida team who barely made a bowl game. And they beat the worst Oklahoma team I can remember. And couldn't get it done at Clemson at home and dropped another couple of games that they probably should have won. So kind of coming into this, there's a lot of reasons to doubt Florida State. But with that said, they bring back the second most production in the entire country from their team last year, including 17 starters. The defense is still trending upwards. And so if they can hang with the LSU and escape Clemson unscathed, the schedule lines up really well for a college football playoff run, especially after Clemson allows them to get better throughout the season. So they're, hate to say it, they're set up to be back. Again, we've heard that from Texas for years, but we'll see how it actually plays out. Pittsburgh, third quarterback in 3 years, will be running the show. Luckily, he'll be protected up front as most of the offensive line returns from last year. Lots of new faces on defense that they'll have to adjust to, but they have a nice backloaded schedule, so quite a bit of runaway to get acclimated with the schedule. North Carolina, no doubt it's the Drake May show, and that's exciting to watch. Likely top 2 draft pick in the upcoming NFL draft. They also have 8 other starters back on offense from last year's team that averaged 40 points per game, and they look like a real ACC contender. They stumbled down the stretch with losses to Georgia Tech and NC State, but if they can kind of pick up where they climaxed last year, they're absolutely a dark horse contender if they can pick up a sneaky win against Florida State or Clemson. Miami, they stung me last year. I was so excited for the U to be back. I was hyped. I was rewarded my optimism with a 5-7 team. But with that said, I think I'm buying in again. Quarterback Tyler Van Dyke showed some real flashes in 21, and between the preseason hype and injuries, it just couldn't get it going. Hopefully in year 2 under Cristobal, he can stay upright. If he does, he could very well be the third best quarterback in this pretty deep quarterback-rich conference. And if he is, they could see a huge jump as they bring back a lot of production. 19 starters back from last year's team. This could be a big leap year for Miami. NC State. They bring in quarterback Brennan Armstrong from Virginia, so that should stabilize the offense, and they certainly need it. They used 4 different starting quarterbacks last season. They also need big contributions from new faces on defense, but in the past, they've shown a pretty good track record of being able to rebuild on that side of the ball, so I'm not too cautious about them, but they should be right around where they were last year. Louisville. New head coach Jeff Brom comes over from Purdue and will likely try to open things up in the passing game more than the previous regime. Also sought out Cal quarterback Jack Plummer from the portal, who should be able to be pretty well suited in that pass-friendly offense. So we'll see a lot more exciting plays. Whether or not that turns into wins, I'm not too sure. The defense brings back most of its secondary, but loses a ton of production up front, losing more than 33 sacks from last year's roster. So they'll have some work to do on the front 7, but watch out. Duke, the third most experienced team in the country. They bring back 18 starters, a ton of production from last year's team. They're not as talented on the top end, like the production that Florida State and Clemson bring back, but they're certainly going to be a tough beat for any team that they face, and that includes Florida State and Clemson. They come in with a good amount of momentum. They won 5 of their last 6 games, including a 30-13 win against national champions Golden Knights They come in with some momentum, winning 5 of their last 6 games, including a 30-13 win against the 2017 national champions, UCF, team led by iconic head football coach Scott Frost. They beat that team pretty handily, and they come in with a bunch of wins. They're certainly, like I said, a little bit, the floor is high, the ceiling not so much, but if they can pick up an upset or 2 and, a couple of things fall their direction, they could absolutely be in the ACC title game once it's all said and done. Wake Forest. The offense is likely to take a pretty big step back. They lose their all-time leading passer, Sam Hartman, as well as 5 other offensive starters. Although Wake Forest is a sneaky team. They head coach Dave Clawson seems to do his best work in the headset when his teams come from under the radar. So the fall might not be as harsh as maybe the trends indicate. Syracuse. Schedule kind of contrasts their layout from last year. They jumped out to a 6-0 lead, and then kind of ran into the brick wall of the ACC season, and they're kind of swept up this year. So if they can kind of survive early, they should be able to pick up some momentum late and strive back for another bowl game appearance. Boston College. Last year, the offense struggled to get anything going as they had to replace all 5 of their offensive line starters. They had a plethora of injuries to the quarterback. This year, they bring back 9 players on offense, and they have a base level of continuity, should improve on that side of the ball. And if they can just keep new quarterback Emirates Moorhead upright, they have a good luck of improvement from their 3-win campaign last season. Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech. The offense last year was atrocious. It's the worst Hokie offense since 1989, as they couldn't even clear 20 points per game. Hoping that growing pains from the new regime, along with 7 starters back, should clear that mark pretty well this year. Temper expectations for the Hokies. They got some work to do if they're going to be back to being an ACC contender. Georgia Tech. Still seeing some speed bumps from transitioning into their classic triple option offense to more of a modern spread look. Good news for the Yellow Jackets. They bring back 4 starters on the offensive line. Bad news, that's about it on offense. New quarterback, new running game, several new faces in the wide receiver room. They also added A&M quarterback Haynes Keene, who they're hoping has the arm talent to spread things out a little bit better than some of the previous signal callers. But future's looking bright for Georgia Tech overall. Virginia. The season was unfortunately cut short after 3 players were shot and killed towards the end of the season. But lots of things to look forward to for the Cavaliers. Now, I'm not just talking about basketball and baseball season. Year 2 under the new coaching staff should help with woes from last year. Also, the defense brings back a ton of heat and could actually be one of the better units in the ACC if they can get some breathers in between drives. And that's going to wrap up the regular season in the ACC. Here's a look how it all kind of shapes up. North Carolina and Clemson going at it again, and what should be a very exciting rematch in the ACC. 2 top teams, 11-1. North Carolina's only loss being to South Carolina in week 1 of the season. Clemson's only loss coming to North Carolina in week 11 of the season. So that's going to be a great rematch. Again, we're going to be doing a postseason episode where we talk about all the conference championship games that come circumstantial to the picks here. Then we'll also do the playoffs, and then we'll try to do our best to do like a to do like a bowl prediction. That one might get a bit messy, but we'll give it a go. Nonetheless, I think this is pretty fine. I didn't expect North Carolina to be 11-1, but the conference really shapes it in their favor. They don't have any real tough road games. They avoid Florida State. Clemson's a tough one, but Drake May, I think, is going to be the difference maker there. Florida State, like I said, I'm very skeptical of them coming into this season just with the additional hype. Like, have they really earned it? But they got a good opportunity here, and they bring back tons of production. Jordan Travis is awesome. Miami, like I kind of expected coming in, does take a good step. They go from 5-7 to 8-4. Let's see here. Any other surprises? Not really. Bunch of teams at the bottom with 2-6 records in conference. Then it's just a matter of who panned out the better non-conference schedule, and if that works as well. Duke, I really like Duke. 8-4 seems pretty good. I think that they're just a couple of talented pieces away from really being in that top tier with North Carolina and Clemson. But that'll do it for the ACC preview. We did it. We made it. Like I said, the conference I feel probably the least sure of. But nonetheless, I'm excited. So thank you guys for sticking with me. This is the ACC preview show. Stick around. We got all the other conferences coming up this week. And then, of course, we got the Cornhusker Connection podcast. We got Bookie Brook and the boys coming out next week. Will be our first episode there. So if you love to bet just like we do, hop on there. We also have a new show that we're going to announce here soon, just about the Big 12. So lots of exciting stuff. You'll want to make sure to hit subscribe and follow along. And even if you don't like the video, if you're an hour into this video, you probably like me. But even if you don't and you just like me as a person, as a friend, as a fella, hit subscribe. Give us all the ratings on all the platforms, Apple Music, Spotify, everywhere. It helps. It helps. It helps us immensely. So we appreciate that. Go Big Red.